Hey guys, I'm back out here at the Panzerfaust Army Range, and in this video I'm going to be comparing a couple classic, pretty much probably the most popular pre-1898 Mausers. So in this video I'm going to be comparing the Swedish M96. This is a 1910 made by Carl Gustaf, and then this is a Chilean 1895 made by Lowe. So we have a couple pretty classy looking rifles here. So around the mid 1890s, Mauser was really incorporating some pretty neat features in their Mauser rifles, and not all the rifles got them. So pretty much they just had like a list of the features, and countries could sort of pick and choose. Mauser sort of had like their prototype most advanced rifles. So countries kind of went shopping for what they wanted. A couple of key differences here. So you can see with the 1895. For one, you can't put the safety on the 1895, just like most of the rest of Mausers. You can't put the safety on when it's decocked, and the cocking piece is sort of fully enclosed. It's within this while it's decocked. Now with the Swedish Mauser here, the cocking piece, it actually still sticks out, and the top of it is serrated. So this is a little bit more for, they say you're supposed to be able to cock it, but I don't think you can cock it by this. You can kind of decock it a little bit. Using that. Also, you can put a piece of like leather in there, something like that, to so if you were dry firing, it would take some of the pressure off the firing pin. Now, another really unique thing of the Swedish Mausers is that while it's decocked, you can flip this safety up. This is just about the only Mauser that lets you put the safety on while it's decocked, which I think is a really neat feature. Now, the Swedish Mauser also has, whenever you're working the bolt, it has a guide rib that turns to the top whenever you're extracting or chambering around, and that's a feature that's carried over onto the 1898 Mausers, but that is not seen on the previous model Mausers like this 1895 or this 1893. You see a lot of cool features on the Swede that I think is pretty advanced. You could almost argue that this is the most advanced Mauser before the German 1898, and I think it really does show. In the Swede M96, I'm shooting actual Swedish military surplus ammo. So this is like the M94, the M41 ammo. So this is the real Swedish good stuff. And then I'm shooting this ammo, which is pretty fantastic. It's DWM made 7mm Mauser. So these are both loaded to military specifications, both good quality brass ammo. So I think this puts the two rifles on a good sort of level playing field as far as comparison goes. Yeah, smooth feeding like all the post 1893 Mausers are. Now, let's see how it is working the bolt from the shoulder. Binds up a little bit there. Huh. Yeah, so it's kind of weird the way it's binding up while I'm extracting from the shoulder. It might be because I'm kind of when I'm extracting, I'm kind of pushing the bolt at like a kind of a sort of diagonal to the gun, to the barrel, and it might be sort of putting a weird kind of bind on the bolt, but it definitely feels like it binds up and that it's not as smooth, extracting as the Swedish M96 is. It's not terrible. This isn't terrible. This probably feeds and extracts a lot better than some other guns like Mosins and Carcanos and stuff like that, like older designs. But just as far as comparing this to the newer model Mausers, it's not quite as smooth. Wow, it sounds so the shot sounds so weird in this, the way it cuts off and cuts back on. Wow, it's like that's a sound, man. That sounds like a gun's going off, you know what I mean?
Well, we can destroy those flamingos.
So let's put some rounds through the Swedish. This is the M96 long rifle. This one was made in 1910 by none other than Carl Gustav. Feels very good. Slightly different sound. Recoil is fairly similar between the 6.5 and the 7mm, I think. I want to shoot one right after the other, something like that maybe, and see. All right, let's see if I can tell a difference in the recoil here. All right, so the M96, 1895. I'm really surprised how similar that is. I kind of thought that the 7mm would be like substantially more. Yeah, huh. Let's do that one more time. Yeah, it is less, but it's so close that it's really neat.
Yeah, just slightly more maybe on the 7, but very comparable. Maybe slightly more on the 7. One thing I do like about them, for being as old, you would think that the rifles would be a little more hard to operate, they're not as smooth, but both rifles do seem to have very smooth actions, very easy to cock. About the only straight bolts I've shot much of are Turkish Mausers, and they seem hard to open, hard to close in comparison. And these seem a lot more refined than that.
Yeah, these cock on close early Mausers are really slick, especially when they're all matching numbers and they're in good shape, and these two guns are matching and they're in good shape. So it really does show off how slick some of these early Mausers can be. And I think that the 1898 loses some of that slickness, for lack of a better term. It feels, the 1898 are like shooting a K98K. The actions feel a little bit more deliberate, you know, whereas one of these older Mausers, you just kind of feel like you're, I don't know, the bolt's just kind of like closing itself almost.
Kind of like an infield slick.
Yeah, it has a really similar sort of cock on close feeling to the infield. And yeah, I think definitely when you're moving the bolt from the shoulder, that diagonal sort of pressure, or this weird sort of pressure that I'm putting on the bolt as I'm pulling it back, because you don't necessarily pull it straight back, you kind of have a little bit of a different angle to it. And I think this guide rib that's on top of the Swede bolt, I think that really helps with the extraction. Yeah, so I mean, it's looking pretty good for the Swede. You have, you know, slightly less recoil from the 6.5, but still plenty of power. Got a lot smoother of a bolt. So the pre-98 Mausers are pretty much just the 2-lug only bolt. They added the third lug, or the safety lug, whatever you want to call it. They added it to the 1898s. So kind of the 1898s going forward have that third lug. So now one thing that the 1895 has going for it that other pre-98 Mausers don't really have is a third locking surface, or maybe you could call it a third lug of sorts. But right here behind the bolt handle, milled into the receiver, is actually a little, it's like a little raised up platform that the bolt knob itself sort of rests against. So if for whatever reason the first two lugs that are back, you know, in the chamber those two lugs fail, you do have this third lug back here. It's not necessary, I don't think, but it's just sort of a nice little safety feature that I don't think it interferes with the operation of the gun or anything. It's just a really nice sort of extra on the 1895, and I think this is probably the main thing that the 1895 has over all the other pre-98 Mausers. I don't know if you could see that, but it really does sort of feel like at the very end of the travel extracting on this 1895, it does seem like the bolt really kind of wants to bind up on that last bit of extraction. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's just a little bit of a pain if you're trying to maybe shoot from the shoulder or work the bolt fast. I think this bolt works a lot best lowering it down to your side a little bit and working it that way. So trying to say this as unbiased as possible, I'm going to definitely say that the Swedish Mauser is probably the absolute best of the pre-98 Mausers. Just the smoothness, the way it works, it's a great caliber. Just these guns are usually in great shape. You know, these pretty much, except for the few that were given to Finland, most of these didn't see combat. So they're in really good shape. They usually have matching numbers and stuff like that. So I think these are really great buy. They don't cost that much. I think for the average gun collector can afford one of these. And there's a pretty big variety. There's 3 different manufacturers that made these, different configurations. Yeah, I think these are great collector rifles. And I do highly recommend getting into them. Thanks for watching. Check out some of the links down in the description, and I will see you guys next time.